I think it seems kind of odd to most people that I spend so much time doing this, that when you look at my channel and you scroll through the videos, you'll find an enormous amount of videos above 20 minutes, only a few days apart from one another. Most people can't even fathom talking that much in one day's time to friends, let alone on a platform meant to entertain and in a way that's meant to be entertaining. But this is something that I've just trained myself to do. I haven't always been like this. It's just something that I've naturally gravitated towards wanting to do. If you go back to my videos in 2016, 2017, it was very rare that I uploaded more than once a week, and oftentimes it was a 5 or 7 minute video of me repeating many of the same things again and again and again. The reason for this was because I really didn't have much to say. I was so young at the time that I didn't know how to properly articulate what was on my mind, and I hadn't been exposed to enough ideas and enough communication from others to effectively even understand what communication on its face is. I spent a very, very long portion of my life, in fact, the grand majority of it, spent alone at that time. I had been homeschooled from the beginning. And so I didn't talk to my parents very much. And when I did, they always mostly said the same things. My parents didn't have a whole lot of stuff to say. They just kind of said, oh wow, the Republicans did this time. Isn't that interesting and funny? Or we would talk about movies from the 80s and stuff. But otherwise, we didn't really speak very much. And so I didn't have a real example to work off of. Maybe I spoke to a kid every now and again, but it was very, very rare. I would sometimes see my cousins at my grandma's place, or and that's going like way back to like super young, and it was rare even then. Um, and sometimes I would see who was it? It was there was a little girl who was the daughter of my dad's friend that he had met at a TV repair place. So I spoke to her for like every now and again for like a few months. Um, Otherwise, there's basically nobody. Like, I basically talked to no one. And as a result, it wasn't just my communication skills that suffered, it was also my social skills. No, you can not know how to communicate like this, and you can still get along socially fine. It's just that you show up with your buds and talk about the weather and make some kind of snide remarks about which football team lost last night. That's easy as fuck to do. You don't need to have any effort to know how to do that. You just do it. And so I didn't even know how to do that. But to most people, that would be pretty simple. But like to learn how to communicate in videos or in writing and talk about more complex ideas, not to say that I'm the most complex guy in the world. I wouldn't, sit around calling my videos like Descartes or something, but they have a bit more going on than what the average person would normally be talking about or thinking about. And that's not to rag on the average person or to necessarily make myself look above everybody else. I'm just saying that, the fact that there are 35-minute videos of me talking about multiple topics and then going into all of the details of them is a sign of going into a bit more depth than most people would do or know how to do. And that was because I put a continual effort into learning how to do that. But before that point, I never really knew how to. I just kind of threw a bunch of things at the wall, often very, very repetitive in terms of which topics I would choose, which, to be honest, I'm still kind of repetitive in it. I just try to make the way that I talk about it different to reframe the subject. But back then, like, it would be a 1 minute or 2 minute point that I would extend to like 7 or 5 minutes, and it would be unbearable. Um, but I had a period in 2017 where I tried to vlog all the time because I wanted to be good at it. I really, really wanted to practice. And it was very developmental for me at the time, did a lot of good stuff. But ironically, the thing that I think taught me how to vlog better wasn't doing those videos. It certainly did help. It was talking on Discord, because talking on Discord allowed me to have an outlet to just throw every single idea at the wall and not have to deal with the abstraction of having it be in front of a camera. When you're in a Discord call, you're just forced to listen to your own voice because you're going to be talking, and so the echo that comes back to you when you say words is inherently in place. You cannot remove that. Whereas with a camera, you can just turn the camera off and you can stop speaking. I really didn't like listening to my own voice. And part of what made these videos possible, made me so comfortable with speaking all the time, was the fact that I just listened to my own voice as I recorded those videos so many times that as I listened to it back, I got used to it. And as I got used to it, I got better at speaking consistently, because the shame and the guilt wasn't there that made me want to stop. And as I spoke consistently, I only got better because I was doing it consistently. So you can see how all of it kind of ties into one another. But on Discord, that was a place where I really wanted to talk to other people, and I got excited about speaking to other people because that wasn't something I did for most of my life, that I would just go into calls for hours every single day. And as I did that, I kind of observed the speaking patterns of other people, and I copied many of the speaking patterns I had learned off of YouTube for, however many years at that point. I had started kind of inherently copying them at that point. I also started copying the speaking patterns of my friends, and I started learning how to be exciting, rambunctious, make jokes in conversation, and to speak in a long-winded fashion. It wasn't always interesting, but that was the point. It allowed me to practice getting these ideas out when before I didn't necessarily always have the energy to. Sometimes I was too scared, too nervous, or just outright too guilty with the product that I refused to do it, in spite of the fact that I enjoyed it. And what had me thinking about this was that there's a frequent commenter on my channel called Keith is Weird. Really nice guy. He's always leaves very nice comments on my videos. And I went to his channel today, and I was watching through his videos, and I had a comment exchange with him on his channel where he told me that what he saw in my videos was that when he watched my Being an Archive video, he saw that I've just always done this. And he looked back through my old videos some time ago, and he saw like the way that I, at such a young age, would just talk about video games and stuff because that's what made sense and that's what I wanted to do, even though everyone else around me was like, well, what is this? What are you doing there? And like when I was much younger, recording stuff with the camera my grandma gave me. And I thought that was really interesting that he said that, because it is something that I've been naturally inclined towards. But at the same time, like doing YouTube, I've talked at length about how much of a struggle it was, how difficult it was for me to record videos because I was so obsessed with doing it correctly that I would sometimes take months-long hiatuses where I said, no, I give up. I don't want to do YouTube because I'm so critical of how I'm talking and what I'm doing. And really, it was those calls at the time that made me push through and record something every now and again that I was proud enough of, that when I saw the pride in those few works that I had used the skills that I had learned from doing those calls, and when I looked at those videos and I was like, whoa, I've progressed that much in knowing how to talk. I have an idea like this that I've thought about for such a long time, that in that moment, all of the passion just came out to create this work. And when I looked at it, I was like, how did I do that? How did all the words just come out? But that was not a thought I was going to have in those previous months before I did the hiatus, when I said, I'm quitting and I don't want to do it. I made many, many videos saying, I don't want to do it, I'm quitting, or just didn't make a video at all saying that because I was so nervous of my own voice. And I hated my own voice so much, hated all my ideas, hated all of the way that I talked. Writing, it was even worse with writing, is that I would have to literally force myself to write each day because I hated absolutely everything that I produced, hated all of it. Um, but I kept pushing through, and it got to a point where I was watching this video by Digi called Why Digibro is After Dark. And he goes on this long rant where he talks about how when he was a teenager, he wanted to be a filmmaker. He obsessed over the idea of being a filmmaker. And ultimately, he didn't film anything. He filmed like two things and never used the camera, but he would constantly talk about how he wanted to be a filmmaker. And ultimately, what he realized was that he couldn't do it because he did not enjoy the act of doing it. And that struck so much of a chord with me at the time that I actually cried because I was looking around me and I was seeing the scraps of paper around my room of notes that I had wrote that I had never finished because I wasn't enjoying the project. I had looked at all of the vlogs that I produced and the fact that I was so ashamed of my own voice that at times I had gotten so mad at myself that I quite literally hit myself in the face because I was so frustrated with the work that I was doing. I was looking at absolutely every single element of me as a human being, and I was tying all of that to my content. I thought if my content is not good, I am not good as a human being. I wasn't enjoying the process. I had spent so long in that mindset of I need to make good videos or else I am not a good person. And I had spent so long in this beginning phase where I was just practicing and I was absolute garbage that it felt like a slog to get through. Like it felt like the reason I had started in the beginning, the fun, the enticement just didn't exist. It had been so long ago that I had forgotten about it at that point. And so watching this video, the tears came out of my eyes and I had this almost religious moment where I thought, should I just give up? Should I just not do this anymore? And there was about 4 months of me emotionally deluding myself into believing that video was wrong and that the logic was wrong, which I think the logic was completely on point now, but I had just done every single thing I could to deny the claims that he had made in that video. Because at the time, I didn't believe I enjoyed YouTube. I didn't think I liked it. I had to do every single thing I could to try and convince myself that I did. If you go back on my blog, I had a blog post where I made this in 2016, around late 2016. It was called "I Will Always Be Creating" or something like that, where I just went through and I talked about how much I loved the idea of creating things, how it was a kind of mental, how it was kind of like mental upkeep for me, that when I spoke or wrote something or made something in general, it gave me a sense of meaning and satisfaction that I didn't have otherwise. And I would write posts like that all the time just to remind myself these are the things that I enjoy. And ultimately that was true, but I didn't believe it was true. I had to make myself believe it was true because I was not enjoying the process at all at this time. To be honest with you, I don't think I really started enjoying the process until like 2018. Like most of 2017 did not enjoy the process. There were like a few videos that I can firmly say that I enjoyed at the time. But I was incredibly self-critical. To be honest, even now I can be pretty self-critical. Not so much anymore because I just release literally everything on here and I've kind of made that a principle of the channel. But even like a month ago or like 2 months ago, even a couple weeks ago, I was sitting around ranting about, oh my God, my content is shit and I'm so mad at myself and all this other stuff, because that's like my instinct. My instinct is to be self-critical. And at this time when I was beginning, it was the only thing that I could see was the flaws. And I just connected the flaws to myself to such an extent that I believed that it wasn't just my art that was flawed. I was flawed as a human being for having made it. And it disenfranchised me to such an extent that I just felt like giving up entirely, that it didn't feel like it was worth doing. But I kept doing it anyway through some force of luck, the right circumstances coming about, and the fact that it has been in my heart my entire life. But even for me, as someone with a predisposition to wanting to do this, someone who has quite enjoyed doing this from an extremely young age of 7, even for me, I had that uphill climb where I was constantly questioning why I was doing it. Where I said, do I want to? Do I really want to be doing this YouTube thing? Do I really want to be doing this writing thing? Does it mean anything to me? Do I like doing it? Man, I've for the last year or so, I've just been sitting here suffering and complaining and sad and looking at every single thing that I make and feeling so terrible about it that I have to literally slap myself across the face, for making a mistake. Getting so angry during recording sessions that I have to re-record the same thing 20 times because I get so mad that I actually just stop because you can hear the anger in my voice. These are real things that happen. Frequently, these things happen. And so, like, even for me as a guy who likes doing these things, who very, very clearly likes doing these things, who can make videos all the time now, I was not originally the guy who did that. Now, when I was young, I just recorded, like, random things, like, completely random things, just because I liked the idea of creating something. But I think the difference between merely creating something just in your house and projecting an image the way that I was trying to, the goal was with YouTube, or just really the goal with anyone on YouTube, is to project your voice. It's to express an idea, to have an idea, and to express it well, to communicate. That is something that I've always enjoyed, but it's something succinctly different than just merely recording something, making something, And that was really the challenge to overcome, was learning how to do that, to accept my own voice and learning how to be good at using and projecting it. Now, to this day, I have a lot of flaws that I need to work through, that I need to iron out, that I need to be good at. But it was those initial couple of years where I was really, really struggling in whether or not I even wanted to do this, and in doing it itself, that left me questioning all of this, questioning all of it. And it's so hard to determine if it really is something that you're passionate about because of that. Because, if Keith had spoke to me 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I would have just said, yeah, I agree. YouTube isn't for me. I'm giving up, man. C'est la vie. Sayonara minasan. Like, I would have just been done with it. I would have said, it's time to go, time to pack my bags and get out of here. I mean, even recently, I've done things that are pretty autistic, that are kind of similar to that, where I said, oh, I'm leaving YouTube, guys. I'm going to become a Buddhist monk. Ooh. Like, just really nonsense, phases like that. But I guess, mental illness can take its toll every now and again and make you act kind of delusional. But the core is that I've always gone back to here because it is something that I am very passionate about. But I know that now because the results show that to be true, that I've continued to do this so long that the results have only shown that I care about it. But I've given up so many times in the past. I've gone on so many hiatuses. I've got rage quitted at so many times that I was doing it. And the only proof that I can give for the fact that I enjoy it is that I'm enjoying it now and that I persisted through all of that pain. But when I was experiencing the pain at the time, I did not know. I did not know if I enjoyed doing this. I was hoping, I was believing that I enjoyed this. And as a lot of Lacanians would say, you can only believe that you believe something, but you can't know. You can't truly know what it is that you're thinking. You just believe that you believe it, and I think that's really the core of all of this, is that time has shown it to be true. The results have shown it to be true. But in that beginning phase where I was just starting out, I was just trying to do this, I would have told you that it was time to give up for me. I would have told you that it wasn't my thing. I had to use so many weird methods of, emotional delusion, of seeking rewards and punishment, just to get myself to do basic things to help me get to the level that I am now. And that relentless self criticism, that obsessive need to do this, not want, need, to continue practicing and practicing and practicing. It didn't just border on obsession, it was obsession. It consumed my entire life. When I woke up, I thought about YouTube. When I went to sleep, I thought about YouTube. Throughout the entire day, I thought about YouTube so much that I abandoned conversations, relationships with friends, family, close ones, everyone, literally everyone. That's how I did this. Now, I'm kind of misanthropic just by nature at this point, but I don't do things that are that extreme anymore. That was stuff I did back then. But back then, I was so obsessive about it that I just completely locked myself in my room. I was going to do content all the time. Didn't matter. Didn't matter what time of day I was awake. Didn't matter what I had to do. All of those obligations were out the window because content was my beast, and that was the beast that needed to be slayed. Didn't matter to me however many years it took. What mattered to me was that it would be done. And it didn't matter to me how much I enjoyed it while I was doing it. This is not the way people should do things. It's not the recommended way to do anything. But I was obsessed with this like Sisyphusian ideal of just experiencing so much pain that because I looked up to the creators that had inspired me so much, I had been, I had emoted so much from their work. It had meant so much to me that I just wanted to mimic it. I wanted to create something that would mean something to someone else to the degree that the works that inspired me had meant to me. And now I've done that, and it makes me really happy whenever I see that I've done that. When I see someone enjoyed my work, like I say thank you, but that feeling in my heart, like as the amount that I think about when I get these compliments, it really does do me good. It makes me really, really happy. And that's something I don't entirely know how to explain. Like, there have been periods in the past where I was in that very like self-critical phase where getting a compliment just made me think about all of the things I was doing wrong and how I could do them better. Because it's part of my nature. I can be very self-critical. It's part of my upbringing, and nowadays I'm much better about it. But it's been one of those things that I've had to deal with in all aspects of my life, whether it be social anxiety, trying to talk to people and then ending up failing because I didn't have the confidence, because I was critiquing every little thing that I would do, and as I was analyzing what I would say in my head, when I would say it outwardly, it would come out jumbled and I would make a lot of mistakes because I was thinking more than I was speaking. The goal of effective communication is not to think about what you're saying, it's to maybe think about the topics you're talking about beforehand, to have prior knowledge on the subject, but it's to just go. That's how you communicate. Effective communication is about seeming natural. It's about having confidence in what it is that you're saying and knowing what it is that you're saying, or at least knowing how to bullshit so well that you can seem like you know it. And that comes through by just going off the rails. You aren't controlling the steering wheel anymore. The car is just moving across the road. It's almost controlling you. Is that when these words come out, this waterfall, this cataclysm of verbiage that comes at you through this camera, when all of that is coming out, it's not because I planned it. I have a basic idea of what I was thinking about through the video, but in most cases, I end up coming up with more conclusions by making the content than I did when I was thinking about it. And that's because it's a stream of consciousness. It is literally a stream. It's the words just come out and then they build on each other as they go on. And that's how you effectively communicate, is that you come to reasonable and interesting, or at least fun conclusions by having an idea in the beginning, and then those conclusions are ultimately came to by just speaking long enough for them to eventually come out. There's the element of density as well, is to not go on too long about a certain subject, or if you do, know how to pack it with enough different framings of the same idea to not tire out the person who's listening. Knowing how to use intonation to change the pitch of your voice as the excitement of the topic goes on. So to show your audience that you care about what you're saying, you have to move your voice up and down so they don't feel bored by what it is that you're saying. You know, spacing out the words in a certain way. That, like, all of these things aren't things that you should be thinking about while you're saying it. That's what I was doing in the beginning, because I didn't know how to just do this. Because the only way to just do this is by practicing doing this for fucking years. That's the only way you know how to do it. And only when I knew how to do that did I say, I enjoy YouTube, full stop. There was no doubt in my mind at that point, because I knew how to do the thing, and I just liked doing the thing at that point. But before I knew how to do the thing, it was so much unsure. It was so much more of this self-doubt and anxiety and stuff, because I really didn't know. That when you're in that phase where you're not quite good at a thing, and you know, you're just trying to get better at it, and you have this relentless self-criticism, it can become difficult to remember why it is that you began. And if you just constantly remind yourself that the reason you began is because you looked up to these specific individuals that had this talent, and you liked their work so much that you wanted to do that, and that maybe you're just bored and you need a sense of satisfaction in your life, a goal. If you remind yourself of these things, the beauty of speech, the ideal human being in your head who can speak well, then you're going to get through there. And obviously, again, this isn't me trying to be like narcissistic and self-glamorizing or whatever. I have a lot of problems still with how I speak. I have a lot of problems with my videos. It's just that it's important to recognize where you came from, where you began, and then where you ended up, because that's how we develop. You know, we develop by constantly having these streams of dopamine, by reminding ourselves, wow, that's who I used to be, and I've gotten better in this way. And I think there's a value to telling other people that, is that if someone wants to start making videos themselves, then I think they have to be aware of this dynamic that is probably going to exist with a lot of people, especially people like me who are very self-critical, very anxious, is that there's probably going to be this dynamic of you not really knowing if this is what you want to do. And the only way to find out is just by persisting and doing it as much as possible. And if you put in those thousands of hours and you find out that this isn't what you want to do, then you simply quit. But if the emotions come back to you, the ideal human in your head, the person who you really want to be, shows up randomly at your doorstep, and you can't help but let them in, sometimes you just have to do that. Sometimes the hiatus that you were on forever just ends, and you end up back doing this. Sometimes you say you're going to leave YouTube forever, and then you don't. You come back a few days later. It's moments like that, sobering moments of realization, that tell you how important this was to you the entire time. But you're not going to know that in your first 5 videos. You're not going to know that in your first 10, your first 20, first 30, 50, 40, 60, 70. You're going to know that after hundreds. Those moments of realization are hard to come by every now and again. And it can be disheartening to see them come by so rarely in what seems like a sea of pain and self-criticism and moments of doubt in which you just are sitting there feeling terrible because all of the work that you do isn't up to your code, up to your standard. But for as long as that criticism exists and bites at you, that reminder in the back of your mind that you will be that ideal person one day as you keep going, and the reminder of the elements of this that you do enjoy, however small they may be at this current moment, will allow you to keep going. And as you keep going, you'll enjoy it more. That was my experience, at least, is that As you keep doing it and you keep getting better, you'll recognize more and more positive elements of the craft. And as you recognize those positive elements and you really take them in, you're going to internalize them and enjoy them more. And my feelings for YouTube only become more strong the more that I do it. Because as I get better, I enjoy the craft more. And so for me, the answer to whether or not this was something I wanted to do, whether or not I enjoyed doing it, wasn't so much in how long I did it, not in the first place. It was more so in, as I got better, how good I felt for reaching those goals. If you haven't reached very many goals, it's not going to feel that way. But once you start reaching them, once you start winning those winnable games, as I like to say, then you're really going to feel the immense catharsis and the dopamine rush of having done that. And I think that's what's important. That's what's really important to recognize when you start out, is that those feelings aren't going to be there immediately. But the only way you're going to find out if you can feel them is if you keep doing it long enough to feel them. That's all I have to say.